Yeah, we just parked at the Lehman Cave Visitor Centre. Gonna do a cave tour. We're just going in this admin office here while we wait for our little briefing, and I guess we're going in.
And most people that have been on tours don't find claustrophobic, but results may vary. But I don't think there's any really bad parts of the cave. So if no one's freezing, we can actually sit down for just a few minutes. It'll be our last chance to sit down for about an hour and a half, so if we want to take advantage of that. Any other questions before I head on in? Part of the first room of Lehman Caves, known as. Now, right from the get-go, is there anything here that doesn't appear to be in the actual part of the cave environments? Light. Exactly.
Switches.
Lights do not come with the cave. Someone said the floor. Yeah, the floor is concrete that was finished in about the 1950s. We also have handrails. Again, they don't come. It is the rest of the rock palace of Lehman Caves. And I want you all to imagine that you're in the. And so later on, about 10 million years ago, you had fractures erupt throughout those bits of marble, bits of limestone, and those fractures were later hollowed out by acidic groundwater from below. Column? Column. Yeah, it's a column, exactly. Yes. So how these form, we have fractures in the rock above, and rainwater and snow melt percolates through those fractures. As it does so, it collects CO2 from the soil, and it forms something known as carbonic acid. Exactly. So carbonic acid.
Watch your head.
Yeah, it's easier for some people. All right, let's all kind of hang out in this area. Want to make sure everyone can. Then, what's our rate of growth for cave?
An inch, 100 years?
Exactly.
Well, here's.
There's some dirt there, but this is actually a treasure trove of rat poop. This is an example of a pack rat midden, and what a midden is essentially a time capsule for everything a pack rat would have foraged for, kept, eaten, excreted, and these can give us amazing amounts of information about the environment around the cave system. A cave that is very heavily fractured. When you have a fracture in the rock, the water in that fracture can be highly pressurized, and if it contains calcite, it essentially deposits the calcite on both sides, kind of like if an Oreo cookie, if the cream in the middle turns and
That's a tight one, huh?
and watch your head and go sideways.
Heads up.
Yeah.
Got Brandon in the back? Awesome. Yeah. So this room is called the music room. Do we have an idea of why it's called that?
Looks like an organ.
Yeah, exactly. So some of the early tours came in here, and they thought that this wall of flowstone looked very much like a pipe organ. Yeah. And so this really was the path right there.
Passages are the best part, huh?
Yeah.
They're racing through there.
Brandon, bring up the rear. So, someone brought in wildlife in the cave, and yesterday there was actually a bat who was roosting right here for a better part of the day. But sadly, it seems like he's moved on. Maybe he got tired of the tours coming through. But in this room, there are a couple cool things I want to point out. One is that we see structures form. You have a fracture, and eventually the water in that fracture, the calcite there, forms the basis of the shield. And Lehman Caves, as I mentioned, is well known for its shields. We have about 300 examples of cave shields. Yeah, there's a really cool flowstone formation right here.
He's doing photography.
Gotcha. That's okay. We have a small enough group that that's not a big issue.
Cool.
Yep. Keep watching your head. And last time, right here. In Lehman Caves. However, they do not now. Anyone remember why?
Closed off the entrance.
Right, the natural entrance was closed off for about 40 to 50 years.
Why was that?
So that's because all right.
Oh, somebody just had a graffiti, didn't they?
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
So this room, as you can probably tell, when the Park Service took over in 1933, they tried to figure out what to do about these inscriptions because this is very much not a natural part of the cave. So their first method was to try and scrub out some of the inscriptions, just trying to abrade it. And as you can see, it doesn't look the best. It doesn't really just trying to abrade it. And as you can see, it doesn't look the best. It doesn't really change it back to the natural state of the cave. So they figured, well, that doesn't look too good, so let's try something else. So then they took white paint and they just put it on parts of the cave and they tried to cover over the inscriptions, but they realized, well, putting white paint kind of makes the cave look even worse than it was with the inscriptions, so let's stop doing that. And then there was a certain point at which the inscriptions were actually old enough that they were technically protected under the Antiquities Act. And so they were cultural resources that are now part of the Park Service's mission to preserve these as elements of the human history of the cave. This year was actually one of our wettest years in recent memory, so we have a lot more standing water than, say, a couple years ago, which was a dry year. Wait there for a bit.
Secret. You can see the ceiling.
Tenth of a second.
Kinda.
And you want to duck down here. Yeah, keep ducking. And it's a little bit steep and wet here, so you might want to use a handrail. That's cool.
All the formations off here to the left.
So you can probably tell why this is called the cypress swamp. It's pretty swampy appearance. Growing a bit more green. Alright, so I think we got everyone here. So next we're going into the Grand Palace, which will be the last big room on our tour. And I asked that we all collect at the bottom of the trail. I'll talk over a few things with you guys, and then I'll give you all about 10 or so minutes to explore, take pictures, ask questions, do whatever. But until then, let's just go down to the bottom of the trail. And it is a bit steep and slippery from the trail down there, so handrails. That's actually, I've been there once a few years ago. It's pretty cool place.
They've got a pipe work or a stalactite and stalagmite.
Yeah, I think they have, they like side up to certain formations and you can actually do stems.
Yeah, they don't play it anymore, but you can
Yeah.
buy a recording.
So, a couple things I want to point out in this room.
Hey, Sherry.
And for dessert, we have a nice big old cake, birthday cake over there, as it's called. And I mentioned that the amount of water the cave received.
Would it be possible to schedule like a private tour or I'm thinking, would we like to record a song down here?
I don't know. I think that for certain occasions we have that for. I would ask the front desk if they could do something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so clear, isn't it? You know, there's got to be an animal in there somewhere. Yeah, let's go look at. It's a Leaning Tower of Pisa there. A little platform here too. Guess that's as far as it goes. Yeah, there's a pool in here as well.
Actually, yesterday we found a bunch of
Cake.
When we found them,
Yeah.
mostly actually near trails, because they were trapped about the algae. So the algae is also affecting it because we are effectively feeding the animals. So springtails are particularly love algae, so whenever there's algae, they tend to kind of pop up more. We should do that.
Eyeballs in there.
We don't know how far it extends, but it, again, is one of the few parts of the cave that we've not fully explored. So do we have any questions in the Grand Palace? That's a good question. So, I don't.
You see
I
it?
didn't even see him.
Yep.
Yeah, he's tiny, isn't he?
Yeah.
You can zoom in. Yes. Wow. Okay, we're done. Yeah, he's so good to the
I'm sure you can find us down there.
Like we wouldn't have if there be a cave like Lehman Caves?
Not without water.
Water? Water's important. So let's refresh our 4 ingredients, or at least the 3 that we know for how we make a cave. We need
Acid,
water,
minerals.
time, and tectonics. And there's one big picture of 4th ingredient that I was thinking of, and do any of you have an idea of what that might be?
Oh, you're saying cave, not necessarily in a elaborate cave like Lehman's or with all the stalactites?
I'm thinking one comparable to Lehman with stalactites. The ingredient for making Lehman Caves is life. It's the fact that we have this ocean full of marine life, and that marine life forms the basis of limestone. It's the fact that we have this amazing cave ecosystem whose creatures affect the cave. We have humans who come in, we brush off dead skin cells. We have bats that come in and provide a food source to these cave creatures. It's the fact that humans can come in and influence the cave environment in ways that we don't know at first, like with the algae, with the inscriptions. And I would argue that although Venus and Mars, you could have similar structures, I think that Lehman Caves is unique in that it preserves a really concise history of a really concise record of the history of life on Earth, beginning from the humblest microbe all the way up to visitors like yourself.